Hello and welcome to another DGCAD consulting course on REVIT Building 8, A to Z Part 1. And we've already talked about our introduction, of course, and then we talked about the basic floor plans, walls, doors, windows, and placement. Now we're going to talk a little bit more about levels and reference planes. Levels are vertical datum points, and basically it's like almost like a cutting plane in a sense, but it's a horizontal plane that is offset vertically, numerically. And objects like walls and roofs and ceilings and stairs and ramps and railings are all tied into the levels, and they're offset. So these objects are all tied from the top and bottom of these objects are all constrained to a level, and those levels can have an offset or not an offset. So this is basically vertically how we control our objects. You'll see the levels option come up all the time. So they're vertical datum, and the extents of the level is significant. When we'll see that when we draw that in elevation or in section, that it is also it has extents in more or less in the plan XY. We'll see that levels. A new level will, when you create a new level, it will create a new view. You can also say create a new floor plan based on a level, and it'll duplicate that level under a new name, and then you can annotate one and not the other, etc. We'll also note that the levels have grips, and there's a 3D grip that works in there, and we can constrain our levels to stretch with each other. And then we'll talk a little bit about levels and underlaying one level either over or above the level you're on. Then we'll talk about some reference planes. So let's just have a look at our levels. We'll go over to our REVIT here, and I'm just going to go File, New, and New Project. I'm just going to start from scratch, and I'm going to use my normal template. Again, you can go shopping for your residential or your commercial or institutional template file. And then when you get into that, you will see starting off with just your standard couple of levels in here, and there's a floor plan of each one. You'll notice that the level button is grayed out when you're in plan. So in order to use the level tool, you have to be either in a section or an elevational view. So south view, I'm going to click here, and we can see that that's the extent of that elevation. And so I'm going to click on the south, and we can see there's our two levels, level 1 and level 2. I can change this by clicking on here and changing this number to be whatever I want, and it'll move up, and everything tied to it will also move up. I can click on here and I can rename by clicking in here and calling it level 3 if I want. Doesn't matter. Would you like to rename the corresponding views accordingly? Yes, of course I would, and then that happens there. You don't have to do that. And then we can click out here, and there's some icons in here. So as we have these levels, I can click on this and I can move this, okay, and then make it longer. So when we draw back here in plan, and we're all looking inside of here, you can't really see the extents of your level. But for instance, if I was to draw a wall way out here, okay, and hit escape, and I go back to my south elevation, I'm going to see that wall. But you'll notice that you'll run into things, strange display things will happen if these objects sit outside. So you should always try to keep not necessarily your wall inside the level, but rather make sure that your level extends beyond your model objects, and then you won't run into trouble. If it doesn't need, if the significance isn't there, you can always take this and you can drag that back. Now at this side of the level, if I check this on, it means it'll put a little icon on there. So if I check this on, those come on, and of course it's reading its numbers. Once I have that, I can take this and I can move these around, and it just basically, you know, shows the extents of my levels. As well, I can go in here, there's a little 3D button. If I click on that, what happens now is I can take this level, and only in this particular view am I moving that over. When I go to, say, my you can separate basically these two. If if I go to my north view, you'll notice it's exactly the opposite, but the icon in this one is told still to be 3D, meaning that it is controlled in 3D, which means they're all gonna follow if I move this. If I unlock this, I can still take this and move it over and move it up if I want, but generally we do try to keep these things aligned, and that's what the locking does, and it automatically kind of locks in there. So what the 3D button does is that when I stretch this, it will stretch in all the views that it's visible as far as the extents of it. If I take this mark off and I stretch this, what happens is I'm only stretching this in this particular view, in the north view. In the south view, which is the opposite, this one is also being told to be 2D, so then it cannot, it's not watching the other one either. So if I take this and I pull this back into here, I'll be able to, for instance, click and make this a 3D button. Now if I stretch this over by the wall, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. Click on here, I can stretch this beyond in the wall, and then in the north view, if I was to take this and make this also 3D by bringing it back, it will follow the other one. So that's a bit tricky to explain, but basically if you stretch it in the 3D is on, it will stretch that edge of the level in both views, or in all views, not just in this view. 2D means this view only. So as we draw these, we can then go in and we can start to draw level 1. So we can go in and we can just draw some walls, and I want to turn my chain on. So however I want to do that, maybe do an arc somewhere in there like that. Hit escape. Probably want to take this and pull this back a little bit. Don't need this anymore. So I'll have that, and that's on my first level, and if I go to my 3D view, I'll see that where that is, and if I go down here, of course, I'll see what's going on over there. Go back to my first level. Now the thing is, these walls weren't constrained. I want to go in here and I want to say just the walls, and then after I do that, I'm going to check the properties of the walls, and I'm going to say, well, level 1 is fine. Top constraint is up to level 3, and then do I want to offset it? In fact, I do want to offset it by minus 300, just as an example. Hit OK, and then if I go to my south view, I can see there's my wall, and then if I move my level up, this will stay 300 units under that object. Okay, and then work around that. I can go into 3D. I can see all the walls that are also in there this way. I can click on them, go back to the properties, and do the same thing all inside of there. That's exactly the same. Now what I'm going to do, I can do this in a couple of ways. I've done it before already. Right click, and then I just say edit, copy to clipboard, and then of course I go to my level 3 and I say edit, and I say paste aligned current view, or I could pick the level, and now I'm going to select those walls and pick the properties, and then, okay, they're on level 3. Top offset is fine with 6 meters. I think is a bit much. Let's go 3 meters, and it's level 3 minus minus 250, 300. Hit OK, and then go to my south view. We can see that this wall is sitting down, meeting up with that one in particular. Okay, then I can go now and draw another new level, because I'm in elevational view. I can draw a level inside of here, and I can draw that level, and I can drag it across. Click on there, hit escape. That's going to take on the next number, which is level 4. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this, and I'm going to use my align command, and I'm going to say align this to now let's just do this in 3D, and I'm going to go tab, no, and just a sec. I'm going about that the wrong way. I'm going to go to the top and I'm going to use my tab key and grab all those walls, and I'm just going to go to the properties and I'm going to say the top constraint is up to level 3, and I'm going to say up to level 4 with an offset of 0 and hit OK, and then go back to my south view, and of course now that's been constrained, and then that can go up to there, and I can rename that to be my roof level, and then I can go to level 4. Notice that I'm seeing the level below grayed out, and that's an option inside of here. When I go into my view and I say into view properties, I can go to where it says underlay, and by default it's underlaying my level 3 to show me where the level below is. If I say none and I go up here, it won't show me the level below. Okay, and I just did an undo. So you can do an underlay of levels. Okay, now I can go in and do a section, for instance. I can draw a section. Notice I can't do a level. Draw a cross section in here, and I can double click on here, and then of course there's my section. Same thing, I can click on here, and then we've got all our options and our numbers, and we can see how that, and this is my clipping plane that you're seeing there, and we can choose to either have the clipping plane turned on or off by here, crop region on, crop region, hide crop region, and then it's not going to show me that. That's just a display thing that we've got down inside of here. And then so we can place those levels, and then once we have them in there, we can take these and we can hit this button here, and then we can take these grips and move these around, because sometimes we need to do that. And then we can take the text, and we can also move the text as well. So those can be all moved around. You can take this and you can bring that back up, and it'll straighten itself back out again if you want. So we've got that control again on here. We can turn this one on or off and have exactly the same control that way. So let's have a look at our document here. Walls, roofs, ceilings, railings, stairs, they all have that same thing in their properties. When you go to draw a wall or a roof, and inside of here it's always going to ask you what level do you want to associate it to. Okay, and you can open it in that view, and then when you actually draw the object, or when you draw a wall, notice how I can't draw the wall command in elevational view. I need to go down into here. When you draw it, always check your properties where the wall is starting and where it's ending. Unconnected means you can just plunk a number in, and then it just means it's going to be a hard-coded height of the wall instead of tying it to a level. Okay, so we've got that, and then we've got the offset levels, vertical datums, a new will create and note the grips. So if we make a new level, it makes a new floor plan. So if we go back into here into south elevation, or let's go to the east elevation just for a change, and I say level, and I bring a new level in over here. Okay, as I bring this in, I can say plan view type. So I'm drawing a level in, and I can go in here and say, do I want to create a ceiling plan of this level? I don't really want a ceiling plan of this level, but I do want a floor plan of this level. So I hit OK, and I click on here, and then I hit escape, and then there it is, level 5 instantly created. I go down to here, no underlay. I could go then to my view properties and say, okay, underlay level 4. Well, there isn't actually anything on level 4. Let's underlay level 3. We'll be able to see what's in there, and we can trace it. We can still select these objects. This is where I can hover over and I can hit my tab button and select all these objects, copy and paste up to my level. So you can reach down between your levels by using underlays, and then copy and paste those objects vertically up through your building very efficiently. So that would be good for structural components, of course, that are going to be carrying loads down to the foundation and footing. And let's have a look at our document here. We've talked about underlays and the significance of our levels and all of our grips. Reference planes and reference setting work plane with these reference planes. So if I go back in here, we can also go into any level we want, for instance, and we can draw a reference plane, And reference plane, unlike levels, can be drawn when you are in plan or when you're in section or elevation. So all I need to do, if you don't need a grid line, you should put some reference planes in, because you can put these reference planes in there. You're going to want to keep them being 3D like that. And then what happens is you can take these objects, you can stretch them around. They don't print unless you really want them to. And then of course you can use your align tool, and then you align stuff up to it, and then probably lock it. Now this case, I'm going to run into a problem because it's offsetting my wall below, but that's okay because I could do my cross section through there and then realign all that stuff just in a second by going into here, clicking on here, double clicking, and I can see there's that problem. So I go in and I do my align this way to this way, and then lock that vertically, go back to maybe my level 3, and everything's good. And then now that I have that, I can move my reference plane, and the whole side of my building is going to update. Oh, of course it's got a problem. We'll just cancel out of that. But that way now we can control by here. It's not a grid, it's a reference plane. It's also a 3D point. If I go from my east elevation, I'm going to see that reference plane, and I can move it in 3D here as well. Okay, so reference planes are great for that. You can tie them in, you can lock them in, and then you name the reference plane. You click on it, and you go into the properties, and you give it a name, and you might call this north, or whatever name you want, and hit OK. Now if you ever want to draw on that plane, and this can be a 3D plane, you can go in and you can say Tools, Work Plane, and you can say Set the Work Plane, and you can say, well, I want the north reference plane to be my working plane. You can also pick a plane by picking an object, or you can pick a line. But then it's going to say, okay, which view do you want to look at it? I want to look at it in the south view, and then I open it. Now I'm basically working right on that reference plane right now. If I draw anything, it's going to be right on that reference plane. Okay, and you can see that also when you do a reference plane, you don't have to draw a line. You can actually pick a surface, or you can pick a line and create a reference plane off of that as well. Okay, so reference planes, very nice for tying them in. They show up both in elevation, section, and in plan. You should always give them a name. It's going to show the name right there for you, and then you can use that and reference that in other ways.